Today, we're diving into the Berlin Conference, a single meeting in Germany that literally redrew the map of an entire continent, and in doing so, changed the course of history forever. But let me ask you this first. Just imagine, what if the future of your home, your culture, your whole world was being decided in a closed room thousands of miles away by people who'd never even met you? Well, for millions of Africans, that wasn't a hypothetical. It was their reality. So picture this. It's the winter of 1884. A group of men from Europe's most powerful nations get together in Berlin. And their job, to sit down and just calmly draw lines on a map. But these weren't just any lines. These lines kicked off the infamous Scramble for Africa, a chaotic, often brutal land grab that would completely transform the continent.
To really get a grip on how massive this change was, we first have to understand what Africa was like before all of this went down.
There's this old colonial-era myth of a so-called dark continent, as if it were empty or uncivilized. That could not be further from the truth. Pre-colonial Africa was an incredibly vibrant and complex place. You had powerful, organized kingdoms like the Ashanti and the Zulu, the ancient Ethiopian Empire, and super sophisticated trade networks that stretched all across the land. We're talking about deep-rooted political systems and cultures that had thrived for centuries. For a really long time, European contact was pretty much confined to the coasts. They set up trading posts for goods and, of course, for the horrific transatlantic slave trade. But they had very little power or presence in the vast interior of the continent. That, however, was about to change in a big, big way. So, what happened? Why the sudden aggressive push inland? Well, let's break down what was driving this new race for empire. It really comes down to three main things. First, you've got the Industrial Revolution booming in Europe. This created this insatiable appetite for raw materials. We're talking rubber, diamonds, copper, you name it, and Africa had them in abundance. Second, those same factories were churning out so many goods they needed new places to sell them. And third, well, it was about bragging rights, pure and simple. Having colonies became a huge status symbol. It was how nations like Britain, France, and a newly unified Germany could flex their muscles on the world stage. And this slide right here perfectly captures the complete disconnect. Officially, the Berlin Conference was all about preventing a war between Europeans. Tensions were getting super high over who was claiming what in Africa, but for Africa itself, the reality was the total opposite. This meeting was the starting pistol for full-scale invasion, colonization, and decades of conflict. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The guy who called the whole meeting, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, basically said it himself. This was never about bringing peace or stability to Africa. It was all about managing European rivalries. The continent and all of its people were just the prize.
Okay, so let's get into the conference itself. How did this whole thing actually play out? What were the rules for carving up an entire continent?
You had 14 different nations there, but let's be real, the big decisions were being made by the heavy hitters. Great Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and Belgium under its very ambitious King Leopold II. They were the architects of this new map. And what about the people whose lives were about to be turned upside down? How many African kings, chiefs, or diplomats were invited to speak for their people? The number is, well, it's right there. 0. Not a single one. Honestly, that one fact tells you everything you need to know about the entire affair. So, what did they agree on? A key rule was something called effective occupation. It sounds technical, but it basically meant dibs. If a European nation could plant a flag and show they had some kind of administration on the ground, the land was theirs. This rule alone kicked off a mad dash into the interior. They also declared that major rivers like the Congo and Niger were open to everyone's trade. And then, in one of the most shocking moves, they handed over the entire massive Congo basin not to the country of Belgium, but as the personal property of one man, King Leopold II, who had cleverly convinced everyone his intentions were purely humanitarian. And how did they drop these new countries? With rulers and pencils. Often with dead straight lines that sliced right through the middle of established kingdoms, language groups, and traditional lands. It was a purely bureaucratic exercise that treated the complex human landscape of Africa like it was a blank page. So, the rules were in place. What happened next? Well, this is where things just explode. Let's look at the immediate, chaotic aftermath of the conference. The conference ended in 1885, and it was like a starting gun went off. The scramble went into overdrive at a staggering pace. By 1914, right as World War I was about to erupt in Europe, the job was pretty much done. Just look at that number, 90%. Let that sink in for a second. In less than 30 years, nearly the whole continent was conquered and put under European rule. It was one of the fastest, most widespread takeovers in all of human history. And the human cost was beyond catastrophic. In King Leopold's personal territory, the Congo Free State, a horrific system of forced labor was set up to get rubber and ivory. To meet impossible quotas, his forces used mass murder and mutilation, leading to the deaths of millions of Congolese people. It is truly one of the darkest chapters in modern history. Now, the colonial era officially ended for most of Africa around the middle of the 20th century. But the impact of those lines drawn in Berlin, they didn't just disappear from the map. They're still being felt right now. Let's take a look at that legacy. Those artificial borders mashed rival ethnic groups together in one new country and split others apart. This laid the foundation for civil wars and political instability that are still going on today. The economies they built weren't designed to help local people thrive. They were designed to extract resources and send wealth back to Europe, creating dependencies that are still a challenge. At the end of the day, it was a total re-engineering of entire societies, and they had absolutely no say in it. So you see, the Berlin Conference wasn't just some dusty old meeting. It was the moment that formalized and supercharged the colonization of Africa. It reshaped the continent's entire future on European terms, and its consequences are still echoing around the world today. And that leaves us with one final, really crucial question to think about. This whole story proves that borders on a map are never, ever just lines. They are statements of power. They create identities, and they fuel conflicts. And they carry the incredible weight of history with them, right up to the present day.